Have you ever wondered why my mother would save the water from the boiled potatoes to wash the floors, or why she'd spend an entire evening mending a pair of socks that a modern person would throw in the trash? Today, people earn thousands and still live in fear of the next bill, but at 65, I live on less than $200 a month, and I lack absolutely nothing. The secret isn't in what I earn, but in what I know. Today I'm opening Doña Benedita's notebook to show you how to be truly free. My neighbor pulls into his driveway every evening in a car that still smells of leather and monthly payments. He earns $5,000 a month and he cannot sleep. I have watched him through my kitchen window, pacing his living room at 2 in the morning, the blue glow of his phone casting shadows under his eyes as he scrolls through bank statements. His wife orders groceries online, delivered in plastic bags that pile up in a corner of their garage like soft, suffocating monuments to convenience. They subscribe to everything: streaming services, meal kits, a meditation app to calm the anxiety that all the other subscriptions create. $5,000 a month, and the man is drowning. He told me once, leaning over the fence with the defeated posture of someone confessing a sin, that if he missed a single paycheck, the whole architecture of his life would collapse within 45 days. 45 days. That is not a life. That is a hostage situation with a mortgage. I listened to him, and I felt something that was not pity, but a deep, aching recognition of the trap, because I nearly walked into it myself, decades ago, when I was young and foolish enough to believe that earning more would solve the terror of not having enough. I was 32 when the factory where I worked shut its doors without warning, a Tuesday. I remember the flatness of the sky that morning, the foreman's voice cracking as he read the notice, the sound of metal tools being set down for the last time on workbenches that still held the warmth of the morning's labor. I walked home with my last paycheck in my coat pocket, and the certain knowledge that the world as I understood it had just ended. I had rent, a daughter in school, and exactly 11 days of food in the cupboard if I stretched it. 11 days. I counted the cans. That evening I sat at my mother's kitchen table, the one with the burn mark from the year she left the iron too close to the edge, and I cried. Not the polite, dignified kind of crying, the ugly kind, with snot and gasping and the raw terror of a woman who has just realized that she built her entire existence on a salary that someone else could cancel with a memo. My mother, Doña Benedita, watched me cry. She did not rush to comfort me. She waited until I was empty, until the sobs turned to hiccups, and the hiccups turned to silence. And then she stood up, walked to the shelf above the stove, and brought down a notebook. It was thick, bound in leather that had darkened with years of kitchen grease and handling, its pages swollen with moisture and use. She set it on the table between us like a surgeon placing a scalpel. "Everything you need to know," she said, "is in here. I have lived on less than you will ever earn, and I have never once gone without." That notebook became my Bible, my Constitution, my Declaration of Independence from the economy of fear, and today I am going to open it for you. The first page of Doña Benedita's notebook is stained with tallow and lye. The handwriting is cramped and practical, no flourishes, no decoration, just the recipe for soap, real soap, not the perfumed bars wrapped in tissue paper that cost $4 at the drugstore, but the dense, amber-colored blocks that my mother rendered from saved cooking grease and wood ash. I make it the same way she did. I keep a tin can beside my stove, and every time I cook with fat, the trimmings from a roast chicken, the drippings from bacon, the slick residue from frying onions, I pour the cooled grease into that can. When it is full, I strain it through cheesecloth into a pot. In a separate bucket, I have been leaching water through hardwood ash for days, producing a dark, caustic liquid that my mother called the blood of the fire. I combine them in precise proportions, stir with a wooden paddle until the mixture thickens to the consistency of custard, pour it into a mold I carved from a scrap of pine, and wait. 3 weeks later I have soap. It is not beautiful. It is the color of dark honey, slightly rough to the touch, and it smells of nothing but cleanliness itself. It washes clothes, dishes, floors, skin, and hair. I have not purchased soap in over 30 years. That single practice saves me roughly $60 a year, which may sound insignificant until you realize that insignificance, compounded over 3 decades, is a quiet fortune. The second trick is what my mother called cooking from the bones out. In her kitchen, nothing died twice. A chicken was not a single meal. It was a 3-day project. The first night we ate the roasted bird, crispy skinned and fragrant with garlic and rosemary from the windowsill pot. The second day I pulled every remaining shred of meat from the carcass, mixed it with day-old bread soaked in broth, a handful of whatever greens were threatening to wilt in the icebox, and baked it into a savory pudding that was more satisfying than anything you will find on a restaurant menu. On the third day, the bones went into a pot of water with onion skins, carrot tops, celery leaves, and a bay leaf, and they simmered for hours, filling the house with a steam so rich you could almost chew it. That broth became the foundation of the next 3 soups. Nothing was wasted. Potato peels were fried crisp with salt and paprika. Stale bread became breadcrumbs, stored in a jar for coating, thickening, and stretching. The woody stems of herbs went into the stock pot. Citrus peels were dried on the windowsill and used to scent closets and deter moths. I learned to see garbage as a failure of imagination. The third lesson in the notebook is illustrated with a tiny drawing of a needle and thread, rendered with the precision of an engineer. My mother could mend a tear so that you would need a magnifying glass to find it. She taught me the weaver's darn, a technique where you rebuild the fabric itself, thread by thread, creating a patch that is not a patch but a resurrection. I have jeans that are 19 years old. I have a winter coat that belonged to my mother and still keeps me warm because I replaced the lining, restitched the seams, and waxed the outer fabric with a mixture of beeswax and linseed oil. A modern person sees a hole and sees trash. I see a hole and see 20 minutes of quiet work by the lamp, the meditative rhythm of the needle passing through cloth, and a garment that will last another 5 years. The fashion industry wants you to believe that clothes are disposable. They are not. They are architecture for the body, and like any good building, they can be maintained indefinitely if you possess the skill and the will. The 4th page of the notebook has a diagram of gutters, barrels, and a sand filter. Rainwater. My mother harvested it with the same seriousness that a banker manages a portfolio. I have 3 barrels connected to the downspouts of my roof. When it rains, the water flows through a first flush diverter that discards the initial dirty runoff, then fills the barrels through a fine mesh screen. For drinking, I filter it through layers of sand, gravel, and charcoal in a ceramic crock that my mother brought from her own mother's house. The water that comes out is clearer and sweeter than anything from the municipal tap. I use rainwater for the garden, for washing, for cooking, and on the months when the rain is generous, my water bill is a rounding error. The sky gives water for free. It has always given water for free. The fact that we have been convinced to pay for it is one of the great absurdities of modern civilization. The 5th trick fills an entire chapter of the notebook, and it is the one that smells the strongest in my memory: preserving. Every August, when the market stalls groan with produce that is too ripe to survive another day and therefore sold for nearly nothing, I become a factory. My kitchen counter disappears under bushels of tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and stone fruits. I blanch, peel, chop, boil, and seal. Mason jars line my cellar shelves like soldiers, their contents glowing amber, red, and green behind the glass. Tomato sauce, pickled beets, pepper relish, peach preserves, cucumber pickles sharp with dill and garlic. In January, when the grocery store charges $4 for a single pale tomato shipped from 1,000 miles away, I walk down to my cellar and I choose from the summer I saved. The work is hard. My hands crack and sting from the acid and the salt. But that cellar is my vault, and every jar in it is a coin that inflation cannot touch. While the world was crying over rising prices, I was opening the notebook. Doña Benedita taught me that money is a tool, but knowledge is the master. I have digitized her entire $200 a month survival blueprint into an ebook for you in the pinned comment. It is your exit ticket from the rat race. The sixth trick is dirt. Actual dirt. In a space no larger than a parking spot, I grow enough vegetables to feed myself for most of the year. My mother's notebook contains planting charts so detailed they account for the shadow cast by the neighbor's fence at different times of day. I grow vertically, using trellises made from salvaged wood and wire. Tomatoes climb upward. Beans spiral around poles. Lettuce grows in the shade beneath the taller plants. I compost every scrap of organic waste, coffee grounds, eggshells, vegetable trimmings, autumn leaves, and the resulting black soil is so fertile that seeds germinate in it as if they are eager to live. I do not buy fertilizer. I do not buy pesticides. I plant marigolds to deter aphids and basil to attract pollinators, and the garden takes care of itself with the quiet competence of a system designed by someone who understood that nature is not a problem to be solved, but a partner to be respected. The seventh lesson is the oldest economy on earth, barter. My mother called it the handshake market. I trade my surplus preserves for eggs from a woman 3 streets over. I mend clothes for the elderly man on the corner, and he sharpens my knives and tools with a whetstone that has been in his family for 60 years. I teach a young couple how to make soap, and they help me repair my roof when the autumn storms loosen the shingles. No money changes hands. No taxes are levied. No corporation takes a percentage. It is pure human exchange, value for value, skill for skill, and it builds a community that no economic collapse can dissolve, because it is not built on currency, but on trust and mutual need. The eighth trick is one that makes modern people uncomfortable. I do not depend on electricity for light. I have electricity. I am not a hermit, but I use it sparingly, strategically, the way a careful driver uses fuel. In the evenings, I light beeswax candles that I make myself from wax purchased cheaply from a local beekeeper, or I use a small kerosene lamp that casts a warm, steady glow, perfect for reading and mending. My electricity bill is a fraction of what my neighbors pay because I refuse to illuminate my home like a stadium. Darkness is not an enemy, it is a rhythm, the earth's oldest clock, and when you stop fighting it, you sleep better, you think more clearly, and you discover that most of what you thought required bright light can be done beautifully in the gentle amber of a flame. The ninth lesson is perhaps the most powerful, and it has nothing to do with making or growing anything. It is the 48-hour rule. Doña Benedita wrote it in capital letters on a page by itself, underlined 3 times. Before you spend money on anything that is not food or medicine, wait 48 hours. That is it. That is the entire rule. And it has saved me more money than every coupon, every sale, every discount code in the history of commerce. because the truth is that most of what we buy in a fever, a flash of desire, a moment of weakness, the illusion that this object will fill some void. 48 hours is enough time for the fever to break. I cannot count the things I almost bought and then, 2 days later, could not even remember wanting. The rule does not forbid spending. It simply demands consciousness. And consciousness, in a consumer economy designed to keep you asleep, is the most radical act of rebellion there is. The 10th and final trick sits in the corner of my kitchen right now, as it has sat in the corner of every kitchen I have ever had. It is a clay pot, heavy, unglazed, with a wooden lid that my father carved. My mother called it the pot that never empties. Every day, whatever coins pass through my hands, the smallest ones, the ones that feel like nothing, go into the pot. I do not count them when I drop them in. I do not open the pot until it is full, and a full pot, I have learned, holds between $80 and $100 in small coins. It takes months to fill, and when it is full, it goes into a box under my bed with the other full pots. And that box is my emergency fund, my insurance, my wall against catastrophe. It is not much by the standards of a financial advisor, but I have never once been unable to pay for an emergency because the pot is always filling, silently, steadily, the way a river fills from rain that falls so gently you do not even notice it until the banks are high. I am 65 years old. My hands are calloused from soap making and gardening and mending. My cellar is full. My garden is asleep under mulch, waiting for spring. My coin pot is half full and growing. I owe nothing to anyone. No bank sends me letters. No collection agency knows my name. I live on less than $200 a month, and I lack nothing, because Doña Benedita taught me the difference between poverty and simplicity. Poverty is when the world takes from you, and you cannot fight back. Simplicity is when you look at the world and say, "No, thank you, I already have what I need." The notebook sits on my shelf, greasier and more swollen than ever, and sometimes in the evening by candlelight I add a new page, because the education of sufficiency never ends. And the richest person who ever lived is not the one who accumulated the most, but the one who discovered, with absolute certainty, that they already had enough.